Welcome to the show. I'm gonna discuss a few things here. I got my notes here, and let's just talk about the origins of my desire to know the self. Um, the seeds was planted by virtue of being born in a town that has a slave market in the center. So that slave market in the center of that town kept me conscious of, you know, history of our people and the situations that they had to overcome. Um, which also lead to me saying, like, when you remove monuments, uh, regardless of how offensive they are, you may have the tendency to erase history if it's not taught by the individual's family or school. So that's a risk of removing monuments. But at the same time, monuments can be offensive, and it can also remind you of pain and tragedy. And also, you be scarred permanently by seeing it all the time, every day in and day out. So I understand all the dilemmas with that. But the town is called Louisville, Georgia. That's where I was born. It's about an hour away from Augusta, Georgia. Augusta, Georgia, of course, is the place where James Brown was born. And it's something about that region that creates a certain type of person. A person who looks inward at their situation and desire more out of life. As Georgia in general, Georgia is like the pressure of coal being pressurized until it creates a diamond. You got a legacy of people coming out of Georgia. The Honorable Elijah Muhammad, Malcolm X's father, of course, Dr. King, Ray Charles. I mean, several people. It shines. It put a shine on that pressure, So, that with that aside, but there's certain trauma that comes with seeing the slave market over and over, day in and day out. It awakens a consciousness inside of a person, and I think that is what happened to me, where I became aware at an early age of the black struggle, the black resilience, and knowing, and I was also born during the time period of right when the Panthers was being basically destroyed by the federal government of the United States. And that was constantly on the news, things about the Panthers, and a lot of those black conscious, black power movements during that era. I was born in 1974, but coming of age, the generation who was in the Panthers was still around, and I heard stories. People who used to support movements were still around when I was around, and also the parents of those people and those children of those people who were descended from slaves. Some of them were still alive. As a matter of fact, a lot of them were still alive. So I heard stories, and these things influenced me on my journey of self-discovery, to always have this urge and this desire to know who I am and where I'm from, and also where I'm going. And what happened was, I heard stories about my grandfather delivering messages between those in the movement, because he played the role of the spook that sat by the door. If you're not familiar with that movie, it's a movie about a guy who joined the CIA, or was it the FBI? I can't remember. But he joined the organization. He went out to join it, and they had a series of things he had to go through in order to become an agent. But he had this desire of creating a revolution, and he played the Uncle Tom role, and no one suspected him of being a revolutionary. So he went inside and learned all these techniques and things of how to fight and surveillance and all kinds of little intricate clandestine abilities he attained from this. So my grandfather kind of played a similar role in being just hanging around the whites that he worked for, and he heard of different things that they was talking about, handing out guns to people and trying to kill people and destroy the movement. So he would go and tell the people in the movement what he overheard. That's the kind of people I come from, people who are risk takers, people who are willing to stick their neck on the line so that our people can be okay, right? And live another day. So, okay, long story short, that's the background where I come from. Okay, my family primarily from eastern central Georgia, but some of them in the northern Georgia area also, but most of them in east central, which are along the Geechee River area and all the way to Savannah. Okay, all right, let's get to the next subject. I gave you a little small biography, which probably shouldn't have been so extensive. You know, I have a question for all those who are watching my video here is, when did we stop being African? I asked this question to several people who say, I'm not African, I'm African-American, or I'm not even African-American, I'm American. Give me the date, the time, when did we stop being African? I'll wait. Because the problem with this whole idea of you not being African and somehow you magically became something else is basically ludicrous. I do understand that we have different experiences that has almost made us into a new tribe, new African tribe away from the homeland, right? But that didn't stop from being African. Now, those who willing to separate, to take the last 400 or 500 years as their history and disregard the other tens of thousands of years of history, I actually have sympathy for you, because that is the result of people who've been traumatized for so long and fed misinformation that you have decided that I don't want to be a part of that legacy, pre-colonial, pre-slavery history of Africa. And some of you just don't have the knowledge or the information of what took place pre-colonial, pre-slavery. Now, but you should have the desire to know. You should be presented with the right information. And with that information, it should put inside of you or plant the seeds of the desire to want to know more. If you don't want to know more, then it's you. But there's a problem when the people have become or been reduced to begging for rights. If someone don't like you, then don't deal with them. You're stronger when you work together and unified in harmony. But if you beg someone to eat at their table and they don't want you at their table and they decide to give you a plate of food, you may not want to eat that food. You understand what I'm saying? But beyond that, there are people here who are confused with this whole Native and Aboriginal thing. You got people who are saying they're Native Americans, they no longer African, or they're not African, they're Native American. Just the craziest phenomenon going on. You obviously misread history or don't know history. Several Native American tribes owned slaves. The Cherokee, for instance, when they fled or was pushed away in the Trail of Tears that is known as, they took their slaves with them. Several tribes had African slaves. Several Native American tribes. And when you decide that I'm Cherokee, now having a mixed heritage and being part Cherokee and part African, that's understandable, that happened. But to say that you're not African at all and you now are identifying with the group that enslaved you, that's a psychological problem. But I understand, because there's a lot of trauma and a lot of misinformation. The question for all those out there who say they're Aboriginal and say they're not African, that they're the original Native Americans, but they're black, Black African, African American, whatever you want to be called. Do you have a passport? That's my question. Do you have a passport? Because if you have a passport, you can actually see the places where our ancestors were shipped from. They're all along the coast of West Africa and even East Africa. Some from Mozambique, and even some from Madagascar. But since you don't have a passport, you never traveled anywhere, and YouTube have become your source of information. Here lies the problem. Crack open a book, get a passport, travel, research. Don't take my advice on this. Do the research yourself. There are slave markets all in the South. From Fayetteville, Louisville, Georgia. From the marketplace in Savannah. The marketplace in Charleston. Wilmington. I mean, it's all over. Virginia. You can see these places. Move your butts. Do some research. Take a trip. That's all you have to do. And also, please learn another language. So much information that the English-speaking world or the Anglophone world don't know because it's written in French. A lot of information written in French. And for those who speak French and don't speak English, it's some information that you don't have that's in English. This is how we mess up. This is how we have these mishaps. Because we don't have enough information. And that is the root. Let me say this. The root of ignorance is the word ignore, right? People always say ignorance is the lack of knowledge. But it's not the lack of knowledge. Ignorance is when you ignore knowledge, right? That's how you become ignorant. When you refuse to hear it. So what I'm suggesting, as we go on this journey, and I speak to different people from around the world about culture, language, heritage, genealogy, DNA, political instability, political stability, programs about how to repatriate. When I speak of these subjects with different individuals from around the world, hopefully you'll have some insight and a desire to know yourself. So on that note, welcome to Reclaiming Woury. I'm Woury Jallo, and I am reclaiming my identity. Re-Africanization.